Okay, we're rolling. John,
Great. Tim,
thank you for being here.
thanks for having me.
What can you tell me about the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center? What it is, how you guys got started, and what do you guys do?
Great question. Happy to jump right in. The Warren Miller Performing Arts Center is a 280 seat theater in Big Sky. We started conversations about the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center actually way back in around 2004. At the time, was it was on the campus of the Ophir School District. And the Ophir School District was looking to expand to add a high school. And part of that expansion to become a high school was to have a regulation-sized gym and an auditorium. So a group, a nonprofit, Friends of Big Sky Education, started this big project. And they had to go through 2 legislative sessions to enable a school to actually get a new high school district. There was a moratorium on new high school districts at the time. And so then they started Lone Peak High School in 2007. And then the economic crisis hit. And when they were building the new high school, they were only able to get the new gym. They weren't able to finish their auditorium, which was great for us because once the economy started to recover in 2011, we started a conversation again to say, hey, instead of building the Lone Peak High School auditorium, what if we did something that is pretty common in small towns throughout Montana, where you can make kind of a community center that the school owns, but that the community also can benefit from. And so rather than calling it the Lone Peak High School auditorium, we called it the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center.
And it's essentially right next to the high school.
It's on the campus of the high school. So the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center is the Lone Peak High School. It is their auditorium. And so my job was to help kind of build this 2-lane highway here. On one side, we wanted to build a beautiful facility for our students and also build a program that would come along with that. So we'd have students on stage and learning how to be creative and performers like any high school experience. And then also, my job was to figure out how can we build something for the community. And in a small town like Big Sky with less than 4,000 residents, there's kind of successful parallel pathways there. And so since we completed the construction in 2013, we opened in March 2013, we've since served about 100,000 people, and we're going to be celebrating 500 performances coming up here in a few months now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And that's a very cool, center for the high school to have that. I would imagine that makes for the stuff they do within the high school.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
We had some performers who were visiting yesterday who did a show for the kids. They were from out of state, vocal group, and they were commenting about how beautiful the space was. They couldn't believe that this is a theater that a small rural high school has, and we love that. We love to brag about that. The kids feel really inspired by it, and also the community members who come to shows every week are, you walk in and you have no idea that you're actually on the campus of a high school.
How many high school students are there?
The high school is a little over 100 now. The Big Sky School District is a K through 12 district, so we're actually 4K, which is that's kind of the term for pre-K. It's early kindergarten up until 12th grade. And we've been hovering around 400 students for the last few years.
And that's kindergarten through 12?
Yeah.
Okay.
4K, technically, they're 4-year-olds, but yes.
Yeah. It's very funny, and I can't even relate in a lot of senses. So I was homeschooled my whole life.
Uh-huh.
My siblings went to school, but we grew up in a town of 1,500 people.
Yeah.
So that very small high school it seems normal. Like when I hear numbers bigger, I'm like, wow, that's so many people. Hi, folks. Quick note from me. If you don't already know, the goal of Mountain Mule Media is to build real connection between Montana's businesses and the people they serve. If this episode or any other has given you something worth thinking about, smiling at, or passing along, I've got a small ask. Share it with a friend, text it to someone, post it in your story. That one simple action helps these businesses get seen, grow, and thrive, and it helps this show keep going. Thank you for supporting these Montana businesses. Now back to the show.
I know. Yeah, so I grew up in Tennessee. My high school, I think, had around 400 students. Um, but I mean, it's small, but it feels big enough for sure. I mean, I think we could grow a little bit as a school district. But it's enough.
We met in December at the vendor day.
Hmm.
I don't know what shows have gone on since then, what's coming up, but there was tell me what's happened or what's happening. And I guess probably don't elaborate too much on what's already happened because people might be bummed they missed it. But
I know. Yeah. Sorry. Well, there's always great shows coming up at WAMPAC. Our mission and vision, we've kind of consolidated it, is extraordinary shows every season. That's our new mission. We used to have a really complicated mission. It was like, those mission statements that are 50 words long.
yeah,
So our new kind of mantra, all things prime directive mission, extraordinary shows every season. So for those of you out there who are just learning about the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center, know that we have something extraordinary coming up. We're in our 13th winter season right now, and we just finished a couple events. We had a comedian come in. We have comedians every year. We did a really cool cowboy poetry and music evening last weekend in partnership with the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering. And in January 24th, we have a two-time Grammy-nominated jazz vocalist and pianist and composer named Michael Mayo coming. I'm very excited about this group. He's one of the most exciting jazz artists out there. And then after that, we've got a bunch of other shows, and it's always different. I think what we're known for is something a little bit different. It's really more for the kind of adventurous tourist who is looking for something past the hot tub, past the kind of bison burger. Once you're ready for that next level, you want to get a really cool cultural experience. Come down to the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center and see an excellent show. It's not quite what you would expect because we are really known for bringing out very surprising, different types of artists. Always extraordinary, always excellent. It might be a contemporary dance group from New York. It might be a vocal group visiting internationally, say from the Czech Republic, or any type of any musicians that that are touring around the country.
I told you a couple of years back I saw Roy Wood, the
Yeah,
comedian, and he's a like if you're in the comedy world, he's a well-known, very talented comedian. So many people have said it, myself included, that bass guy in Montana punches way above its weight class.
yeah.
And it very much sounds like, the shows you have on and the different performers you guys have on there's I don't know if you can correct me, but when you say what you might not expect, maybe it's like the caliber of the show and probably the uniqueness of just a wide variety.
Yeah, I love talking about this because the wide variety, definitely. I would say we absolutely punch above our weight, and that is by design. We have to show a little restraint. We don't do a ton of programs. I have about 40 projects a year. Half of them are local, half of them are visiting, and that. There are other places around Montana that might do a little bit more programming. They might do 50 to 100 shows. We scale back a little bit so that we can make sure that every project we do is extraordinary. And that is to match the Big Sky experience. The Big Sky skiing experience is certainly world class. I like the term extraordinary more. So I always think about like what is the cultural analog for being up on top of Lone Peak and getting to ski down that majestic peak with just you and your friends on like a bluebird powder day. That experience, I think a lot of us share that, have had that moment. And you kind of say, how is this happening right now? Where are the crowds? It's almost like it's a trick. This shouldn't be happening. I didn't expect this in Montana. And I want that feeling to be the same when you're at the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center. It's also a little bit of pressure from, honoring Mr. Warren Miller himself, right? I want a big adventure. I want something really exciting, and that's kind of the ethos we take into the type of artists that we bring. It's always going to be something amazing and something unexpected. That's what people always say. They kind of go, even if they don't like it, they might say, that wasn't for me, but I could tell that it was really high quality. Like that might not be my style. And then for those people that we really, strike a chord with, which happens all the time, they just say, I can't believe I got to experience this in a room of just 280 seats. Can I give a quick example
Yeah, yeah,
of
please do.
so in August, I kind of we made a big bet. We brought some really stellar artists. We brought Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. Really big deal. This took me years to set up. It was a big investment for us. And when they were on the stage, I mean, these are truly internationally renowned artists. Bela Fleck, the most famous banjo player on the planet. He was talking to the crowd and he said, "Well, last night we performed at the Gorge for 1,000 people, and tonight we're here with you performing for 270 or 280 people," and that kind of embodies the experience that we're trying to create. Now, we can't have artists like Bela Fleck and the Flecktones every week at the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center, but I try to bring something like that at least once a year or once every 2 years.
Have you been to Live from the Divide before?
Yeah, so Live from the Divide, I think we have kind of similar ideas, right? Extraordinary experiences with a relatively small crowd.
Yeah.
I think they have something like 50 seats there at Live at the Divide. I've seen a couple shows there. Love the work that they do. And that's kind of the Montana experience. It's not crowded. It's otherworldly in terms of just the quality of the connection, whether that's connection with nature or connection with people. I think that that's what the environment in Montana creates for us, and we're trying to stay true to that while also, balancing a nonprofit budget every year.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest appeals in my opinion. And I think your analogy of the Bluebird Day with nobody on it really is spot on because if you looked at that in a picture, you'd think it's photoshopped.
Yeah.
But I think that's what is so appealing, what people are grasping for is that connection to the experience, and you don't just feel like, one of the thousands or tens of thousands of people in the crowd, and that the way you feel those experiences, be it in nature on the mountain or be it in Live from the Divide, be it at your venue, there's that intimacy and that realness that's I love the ski analogy because it makes sense, and I think it probably resonates with a lot of people.
Can I add a little bit to that
Yeah,
as
please do.
well? Another thing I'm really proud of is that we're able to provide these experiences without being exclusive. Our average ticket price is $30 at the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center, which is a huge shock to
Mhm.
people. We're able to do that thanks to an incredible group of sponsors and, tax dollars that we've kind of pieced together over the years. We've put together a really good formula. And also, one of the secrets to our special sauce is what I said before. We're on the campus of a public high school. And, what makes that amazing is that our overhead for the theater is essentially nil because we have a partnership with the schools. So, for example, custodial services we partner with the school on. All of our utilities and kind of energy, just the cost of having a building, are borne by the public school district, which means that um, our program is all of our fundraising, everything we do is fully dedicated to the actual arts programming. Every dollar we raise and every idea we have is super sexy because it all goes into basically artists' pockets and the shows that we put on. And that can be a real burden for performing arts centers around the country. Our industry has been struggling since the pandemic hit, and it hasn't fully recovered. A lot of people are trying to figure out, it, it- I would say discretionary income right now is a little bit stretched. Um, or a little bit constrained, I should say. And so people are being really careful with what they're spending on, and performing arts experiences we know are not the same as as eggs or rent. And so our industry is really trying to figure out how to maintain quality shows without hitting people in their wallets. And so that's something that I'm really proud of. We've been able to maintain excellent programming for affordable prices.
Yeah, that's a very cool model, the way that it's coexists with the high school. I know Jason had talked about that from from Advitas. It's tough. It's a small number, it's a small amount of tickets, and
Yeah,
I believe he has a very similar philosophy that he doesn't want to make it this, you know, elite thing that you need to spend a huge amount of money just to get through the door. And that's a balance because, these artists need to make money,
that's
bills need
right.
to be paid, and that's
And those costs are going up, right?
yeah.
Because those follow the economy, right? Everybody's rents are going up, including artists. And so, we want to continue to invest there and be competitive. So it's tricky, but there is a balance to be found, and that we have to tweak that every year. But I think we have a really sustainable formula. And again, it's so much of it is anchored in that partnership with the school. That's why I wanted to start there today.
I'd imagine, I don't know how much this is talked about or thought about, that has a huge impact on those students to see that level of talent come through. And I don't know how involved they are with each show, but I could imagine that, just opens up the possibilities for what, once you can see somebody else doing something, you might see like, hey, maybe I could do this someday. And to have that come to a small local community like that is probably a very cool experience.
You said it, Tim. I It's always tricky because you got to be careful with what we're planting with high school students. We can't tell them we're trying to inspire them.
Yeah.
What I'm really trying to do is is normalize it. And so when you come to the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center, for those listeners who have been, you'll notice that there's almost always a student who's there at the front door, opening the door for you, taking your coat, handing out complimentary chocolates during intermission. We have high school docents who volunteer for the shows, and they get to see the shows for free. But we don't tell them that we're trying to like give them this experience. It's more, hey, we need your help. Can you come? We'll get you some volunteer hours. And then in that process, it's kind of like osmosis, creative osmosis, where for those kids who are interested, and we have a kind of a group every year who's really interested in that creative side. Um, they're mostly just doing work around the center, like setting up the lobby, and they might help in the tech side of things. And then we want that kind of exposure to happen authentically and casually, so that over time they might just see that it is a path if they want to go that way. And I'm a teacher at the high school as well, and so um, I'm always trying to think about how those two things interact. I mean, one of the best things that can happen for a student who's trying to understand the performing arts, or just what creative expression might look like. I mean, one of the best things that can have happen is just to see a pro on the stage, and also in a relaxed environment where they can just see their craft unfold. And every year we've got a couple new kids. Like there's there's a new kid this year who's like really into it. And I'm just trying to make sure that we've always got something for him to do, because I can tell he wants to be in that energy. And that's kind of like that's why we built this place, in my opinion. I mean, it's to entertain everyone, it's to have something to do in Big Sky, but the real meat of it is, what is the function of a performing arts center in a small community, and what can it do for, especially for the kids at the school who are interested in that pathway.
Yeah, that is so genius and so cool. And I can speak personally, coming from such a small town. And my family, we had a, fully operational dairy farm. Outside of that, it's still in operation. It's leased out to another farmer now, but outside of that, and you see this all over Montana and all over the country, probably all over the world, when you get in these small rural towns when there's not much going on. Not always, but, like, this is when, a lot of, like, things can turn to drugs and alcohol, and
Yeah.
to not see it's and I can just speak to this personally, when you don't see much around you going on beyond what's there, and it might be a little bit different now, with technology and the internet, but you kinda get stuck in that, just stuck in that little ball of thinking. But to see that in a small town, and, like, just the exposure, and like you're saying, not that it's being pressed upon you, but you're soaking it up just by the nature of association, is that's exciting and cool to hear, and, like, that the impact is so much bigger than just a great show for someone.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because, I kind of believe that all of us are, balls of fire and we have to have outlets. I mean, students have to have outlets. Everybody in a small community has to have outlets and they're going to pick something, you know. And I think there are some pathways that are maybe less healthy than others. I'm not going to say that putting on a show with your friends is like, 100% positive all the time. Like there's stuff that happens and it can be challenging, but I do think kind of the net experience when you're kind of held accountable to a group of people, whether you're kind of helping a show happen or you're actually putting on a musical yourself. Like we do that with the high school kids. We have four musicals a year actually for kids K through 12. Um, we watch that. We watch them really kind of burst on stage, once it feels safe and they feel like they can really do it. And it's a beautiful thing. Um, and I worry, if we don't have those types of outlets, and I feel the same way about sports, whichever way you want to go. A lot of people go both. I'm a big supporter of that. Um, you need to be with people. You need to be doing something creative, moving your body. It's a great way to kind of build a strong, healthy community. I very much believe that a performing arts center is an important piece, along with a lot of other pieces to kind of build a strong community for precisely that reason.
Yeah, I agree, and that's so cool that I love when there's, like, when the economics make sense, and sometimes they can't, but when you can actually find something that's, sustainable and regenerative, and, you know, feeds multiple purposes, and, like, the priority probably being the inspiration for the kids, but then, creating jobs, creating opportunity, experience for everyone in Montana. Those are my favorite kinds of businesses because
Yeah.
they're doing so many things. And for quite a few years here, I did CAP mentorship,
Yeah.
and I from a young age was just truly fortunate for the mentors I had, and kind of like you're saying, I wasn't aware of them at the time, but as I got older, and even when I started mentoring, I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm doing this right, or I'm just thinking about it all, and then, like, as I got older, I realized it's really just being there and showing, that there's people to look up to, and, like, it sounds like that's exactly what you guys are doing with this experience, which huge fan already. Very
It
cool.
it's an interesting thing with just being in a place where we have nature in spades. I sometimes I look out at the mountains and I go, man, it's so beautiful. And for so many people, it's just enough. Like you don't really need much more than that view out the window to look at the mountains. I personally, it's not enough for me. I'm selfish. Like I have to have kind of things to do, whether it's to go get on that mountain itself. But I'm a people person, and I love the view of the mountains, but sometimes I
Sounds
find
sounds like you're greedy, John.
I guess I am. I am greedy, but it's I like being with people and having things to do. I kind of need that to feel balanced. Maybe it'll change later in my life, and where really all I do need is a cup of coffee, and I can stare at a mountain all day. But I can do it maybe a couple hours, but the rest of the hours in the day, you got to go connect with people, and um, it's that balance, right? The balance of being out in nature and then also being with people. I don't want to open it up too much, but this is like a big conversation in Montana right now, right? A lot of people are coming out for that experience,
Mm,
kind of deciding, ooh, is this enough? Do we need more people here? Everybody's got opinions.
yeah,
No, we don't need more. Yes, we do need more.
I completely agree with you, though. It always comes down to people. Like, it all means nothing if it's just in a vacuum by yourself, because every experience, at least I can only speak to myself directly, but everything I go through, I'm excited to tell my friends and family about. I'm excited to share these
Yeah.
experiences. Very similar to, this podcast, share these stories of these business owners and these experiences. But it's no matter where these stories go, it all comes down to the people. Like, and that's all a company is about. That's all life is about. It's the people that make it up.
Yeah. I mean, and that's really the need of a performing artist to bring it back around. Like, I just, COVID really brought this point home where performing artists, of course, like pianists love playing the piano, but there is nothing like playing the piano for a receptive crowd who enjoys what you're doing. That amplification of being able to express yourself and then have that be received and mirrored back. I mean, that's the energy that we're creating at the performing arts center. It's really unique because it's not accompaniment, where it's like, oh, I'm having this experience, like I might be out to dinner and then there's this music happening over in the corner. Those are lovely. That's not what we do. We bring in a crowd and the crowd faces forward, looks at the artist, and that is the main event. It's not eating a steak while
Mhm.
also listening to music. um, and that the magic that happens when those things work, like when Roy Wood Jr. was telling those amazing jokes and everybody really jumped on and we get a belly laugh. That energy is really special. We don't take that for granted. That's what we're always trying to create opportunities for that. And I think that connective tissue between the performing artist who's really trying to share with someone else, that's that's that experience that we were also talking about before, like when you're out on top of the mountain and all the elements kind of align. We're just trying to create more of those, I guess, because we're greedy.
Yeah, I was talking with a gentleman yesterday about this, and it's interesting because we were talking about the way when you build a company or a team or business, and you start to show up better as like I think, and I was explaining this a while back to someone when I had my first hire, it made me become a better leader owner because I was like, man, this could be a little bit of a mess because I can figure it out, but I can't have someone else has got it. So it just made me show up better as a person. And then, as a company grows and a brand grows, there's more eyes. So you show up better. And I like I contradict myself because I'm like, the most important things we do is when nobody's watching. I believe that's true. But as I was saying yesterday to Derek, there's also like we can't deny the fact of when people are watching that it changes the way we show up. And I really do think it makes us better. Jason said this with Live from the Divide that the artist shows up different when there's that connection to the people that like with 10,000 people, you might just look at the whole crowd as a giant crowd. But when you see a small group of people, you're like, oh, so I'm kind of saying two things and going on a tangent that um basically like part of me thinks, man, we should be who we are no matter who's watching. But when we know people are watching and we feel that connection, I think it pulls out the best version of us.
Yes, I agree. I think it's kind of like we're performers everywhere. I talk to the kids about this, like, stage fright is it's such a thing to overcome. God, I heard somebody told me that public speaking, people are more afraid of public speaking than bodily dismemberment. That really stuck with me. Sorry, that's kind of a gory image, but it's true. And I see it all the time because I work with kids going out on stage, and it's something people have to overcome. And one thing I always try to think about is I'm like, man, you're kind of performing all the time. For skiers, it's like, the kids who are in the park all the time, like that's a big performance. If you're an athlete and you're on the court, like it's a performance, not just for your teammates, but for the spectators. Like, these are all spectator sports. And once we can kind of just say, like, people are kind of watching all the time, it's just when you're on stage, it can feel a little more intense, but rarely are we performing by ourselves on the stage. I love, the musicals are the best because you kind of, if a kid's having a moment where maybe they forgot a line or something like that, and we practice how to say, look, when you forget a line, the best thing you can do is look to your left or your right and realize you've got partners on stage with you and they're going to come to your rescue. They're going to help you. Um, and I think that the more people who can get an experience actually being out on a stage, the better our society is going to be. Because as you said before, it really does. It has the potential to draw the best out of you. Um, because you want to say something, you want to do something that helps other people. I think that's the intention of every artist. They want to do something that brings joy or brings beauty into the lives of others. That's as best as I can say it.
I think it's very well said, and as my company Mountain Mule grows, the this podcast, but the transportation, that's primarily what our company is. Like we're working through like what's the vision of the company, what's the ethos, and we keep thinking leave everything and everyone better than we found it. And I think to what you're saying, that's very much how a performer feels is unless there's some really rare cases, you're most likely getting up there because you want to give somebody a great experience and you want them to leave there feeling better. And, in the most simplistic version, we can do that with our clients here. We're giving them, you know, I always say we're telling them the story about Montana when they show up here
Yeah.
and use our service. And like, hopefully they feel better about that place and themselves and us when they leave. And I think that's probably very much how people feel when they perform.
I think so. The arts are such an interesting world because there's a lot. Yeah, it's so widely varied, and everybody's got different perceptions about what is the proverbial artist? What does that mean? Is it someone who kind of dresses a little bit different and has funky hair? I think there are sometimes misunderstandings of like artists. This idea that artists want to like really really like poke and stir and cause all this controversy. I've never actually met an artist who talks like that. And I've worked with thousands of them at this point, not to otherize artists, but like I think the intention is always pretty wonderful and childlike, and it's just this idea of sharing something that they're really excited about. Even if it's like a really thorny political issue, I still think the intention of the artist is to share joy and to share something that they find to be beautiful. It's often in the in the interpretation of the art and what's received. That's when things can get a little bit muddled, and that's something we think about a lot. Like there will be a show that maybe doesn't resonate with an audience member, and they'll want to tell me about it, and I'm grateful for that conversation. But I know the intention. I just want to like stand on a platform and defend all artists out there. I really think the intention is unilaterally positive. What they really want to spread out in the world.
I think that really speaks to your nuanced perspective because, when you bring up politics, it can be so loaded. And I agree. And I'll like be the first to say I'm not an expert at that, like of just being able to see everyone's perspective and be like, oh, they're just like, they believe that they're trying to share it. Inherently, I do know that. But they're just me in a different life with a different upbringing. There's a phrase I think everything makes sense or everything is justified with enough information. So if I had enough context of what they went through and where they came from, it would actually make completely sense to me. So I just have to be like, all right, just have to respect it and leave it at that. And if it's not something I'm interested, then I don't need to tune in. I have complete choice, and I could leave. I could walk out of a show, and I can turn off a TV, and that's that's it.
That's true. I know. I don't know how much time we have, but there's interesting stuff in there in Performing Arts Center because when you come to a show, you are kind of locked in. It's more like being on a plane rather than watching a TV show. So I mean, I have a lot of respect for if someone's in a show that that isn't, let's just say it's not clicking, like there's a comedian or something, and
Mhm.
like, the jokes aren't that funny. It is hard to leave. It's hard to leave before intermission, especially where we have, because it's a pretty small room. And so I I empathize with those out there who kind of find themselves stuck in a show that they are like, okay, I'm kind of done right now. I don't want to listen to any more music, or I don't want to be stuck here anymore. But I think that's the risk that we take because it's you really are settling in for a journey when you come for a show, and you really are committing to it. You got to be there on time, and usually it's about a 2-hour experience. And for the 99% of people who love it, it's worth it. But I have love for and respect for those out there who kind of get stuck, and I feel for them, and I want to create safe outs for them. But I do think that mindset you're talking about, like, you know, can you hold that mindset for an hour? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, okay, this is different for me. But that's the job. That's the work we do.
It's easy. Yeah, it's easy for me to say now. And then being that's why I said I'm no expert at it. But I was at a show a few months back at the Emerson. And I like I won't even like say who or what. Because there was just a comedian from New York, and he's probably like a little edgy and controversial, and some people walked out, and then he of course is like, oh, I guess I didn't like that joke, so it makes it even funnier for everyone in the crowd who likes the joke, and I'm like, yeah, that was funny, like, but you could put yourself in their shoes, and like
Totally.
that's the situation where it's like it's not for everyone. I think I try not to live in an echo chamber, but I'm intentional with what I go to and don't go to,
Yeah.
so that I don't want to be in experiences that I'm not going to enjoy at all. But I do try to balance. Um, the podcast has been great with a wide variety of different people because I want more balance. I want more perspectives. I don't want to just listen to what I think because I question what I think all the time, and
Yeah.
I think it's healthy.
I think that also goes into why for the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center we have such a wide variety. I strongly believe that if we try to serve everybody every time, we actually end up serving nobody. And so it's a tricky thing because I love the idea of being able to fully serve an audience member. Like, let's say, so I have a contemporary jazz artist coming in a couple weeks, and contemporary jazz is a little bit more of a niche group. There are people who probably are going to get in that room and who are going to be a little bit overwhelmed. Like, this is music that moves really fast. It's unpredictable. The solos can be really wild. Um, they're not going to be playing any tunes that anyone knows. There's not going to be any kind of jams that people can sing along to and maybe not even tap their foot to. But there's going to be a group of people in Southwest Montana who, that really fires them up. And they're going to be so excited and they're going to feel seen. Like, here is this guy who can do what I do, but much, he's like a fully enlightened being, and he's incredible at it. And there are going to be people in the audience who are just like 100% engaged. And then there are going to be other people who I think are probably going to be overwhelmed by like minute 60. They're going to say, whew, they're like on the roller coaster a few too many times. And, and I respect that. I respect the people who didn't like the jokes of the comedian at the Emerson. I see that comedians are always tough because their job is to be edgy. They've got to pull people out of their comfort zones, and there's just always going to be somebody who they pulled out. And for that, I always say if someone comes to a show for us and they really didn't like it, I would just say, like, please write to me, and like we would be happy to give you a credit for another show. I fully expect that to happen. And I think where we're trying to be successful is to effectively communicate ahead of time what to expect, hopefully without ruining the magic.
Mhm.
Because that's usually where we miss. If we miss, it's because maybe we didn't communicate to that person ahead of time what to expect, and they might have been expecting one thing, and then they get something else, and that shock of it being something else is what kind of creates that tension and maybe the desire to leave. It's pretty rare for us, but it happens when you're really trying to do specific programming that's fully lighting people up. Because I think that's just the nature of the spectrum of human taste. Some people like ghost pepper chicken sandwiches, and other people like, kind of meat and potatoes type of stuff. And I'm not trying to change that. I'm just try to serve as much as we can with the restraints that we have. With only about 20 presented artists each year, there's only so much you can cover.
Yeah, there's a quote that was similar to what you said. It's, if you try to be everything to everyone, you're nobody to everyone or something like that. And as a business owner, I have to realize that, and you got to figure out, who you're serving, who you're not serving, and it's like you need to pick a lane because if you're too broad, you're so scattered. And yeah, with would you say 280 seats?
280 seats.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like you're going to be everything to that audience that week, and then
Yeah.
maybe 2 weeks later, it's the complete opposite audience.
Yeah. And we hope, we have a lot of subscribers who are kind of just here for the adventure. We've earned that trust. And I love, I got an email. We did this cowboy night, which we'd never done. We brought a bunch of cowboys from all over the West and to share their art forms, whether it was songs or poetry. And I just got this beautiful email back from one of our subscribers that said, "Hey, we never really know what to expect anymore, but we always know it's going to be high quality. And even if it's not for us, we're still glad we came." And that to me is kind of a reminder of, it's kind of like mission accomplished. That's what we're hoping to do. I would just love for people who come to Wampak to have an open mind, just like we would an open mind about the weather every day in Montana. It's like, we've all learned not to try to predict the weather here. And if we can approach that culturally, I think we've made a healthier community.
Yeah, I agree. And that the cowboy, do you say cowboy poetry or
Hmm.
that appeals to me or at least intrigues me because I've heard some obviously a lot of country music and songwriting is great, but some of the poetry and stuff is very cool to hear.
It's amazing. I mean, getting to kind of empathize with those enlightened few who know the land better than certainly better than I do, to kind of step into their boots for a minute and listen to their thoughts, as they're ending a day. I mean, it's really beautiful. It was a an incredible evening we had.
Kind of bummed I
At the
missed it.
center. I know, yeah. Good. I want you to feel FOMO
Yeah.
so you come to future shows.
Yeah, yeah, and then what a great way to step into the culture and the history of Montana. Yeah, like just the connection to cowboy and the horse and the land and the cattle is, it's very cool. It's obviously a big part of the appeal to the West, and, um, yeah, you could really romanticize it when you're listening to a cowboy, who's written poetry and found a way to
Yeah.
talk about it and articulate it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of attention on kinda cowboy and ranching culture right now with
Mhm.
Yellowstone so this for us, it was just a compliment to that, say, like, it seems like everyone's kinda thinking about this and, Big Sky's known for its rodeo, which is super fun every summer, and we were just thinking it'd be fun to kind of bring out some cowboys who aren't necessarily like, riding, bulls and to just hear what they had to say. That was, uh, that was kinda my intention with that.
It's very cool. When you kinda touched on it, and when you said earlier, kind of the wide variety of different performance you have, I had thought, and you were saying, like, it could be a hot topic or controversial with all the people coming here and everything, but there's such a variety of people here, which in my opinion makes Bozeman and Big Sky, it's a melting pot of people from all over the country and world, and I think it, like, complements the variety of people here to have these different varieties. Like, when you look at the food around Bozeman and Big Sky, and it's there's a great culture of variety and options given that we're in the middle of the country, and it's very cool, and I think it makes complete sense for here, and you might, to the naked eye, if you're just thinking it's a bunch of cowboys in Montana, which
Right.
there is, and I'm, like, proud to say I grew up on a farm and respect that culture very much, but I think it's healthy and very cool to see a variety of different
Yeah.
people and places and all that stuff.
I think in Big Sky, it's very important to recognize that visitors are welcome and visitors are a huge part of our economy. In fact, Big Sky's economy relies entirely on tourism. And so when we started our center, first it's just to acknowledge the idea that visitors come here, and that's not new, right? I mean, dude ranching has been around for how long? I mean, over 100 years. And so when I was thinking about what does our program need to look like over a year? The first thing I do is kind of drew a line down the middle. We need to feature residents on stage, whether they're students or community members. And we also need to have half of it be visiting artists. And hopefully, through that just real simple binary of visiting artists and local artists, we can create something that feels really healthy and also that honors the reality of where we're at with Big Sky. I mean, Bozeman's a little bit different from Big Sky and university town, but there's still a lot of tourism. Big Sky is mostly tourism. I just wanted to make sure that we were kind of honoring that with our mission and with what we do.
I can respect that and completely relate because I've been careful to try to do that with this podcast.
Mhm.
And because there's some businesses, and mine in a lot of rights does mostly serve people from out of town, but we do work with plenty of local people. And we indirectly work with a lot more local businesses because they refer us and they trust us with their clients. So I wanted to make sure with the different guests and businesses, some might directly just serve people that are residents here, business owners here, and then a lot of them will serve people from out of town. And it's kind of that blend of like realizing we're a big part of our income is tourism here,
Mhm.
but we also have a local community. And like I've tried to be, intentional within reason. And it's varied. Some are like, man, why would you have that business on? That's like you'd only need that that HVAC guy if you own a place here. Yeah, that's the point. And then like, hey, you have this, fishing guide on. You don't use a fishing guide from out of town. Yeah, you're right.
I always wonder, I don't know how much time we have, but I always wonder, like, where is the line
Yeah.
between local and visitor? I mean, I still very much feel like I'm a visitor here. I
Mhm.
started coming here 25 years ago. I've lived in Big Sky for about 17 years now.
You
And
got some real cred with those numbers.
yeah, I guess so. Maybe in Big Sky, but when I'm in Helena, or I'm outside of Big Sky, I'm very much a newbie. And you know, I try to remember that all the time. I, yeah, and I leave, I go on trips. I go on vacations. It's like in Big Sky, it's so interesting. We've sat in these corners. You try to figure out like who's a visitor and who's a resident. Well, when does that really change? I mean, you got some people who come for a week, some people who come for a month. You got second homeowners. You got seasonal workforce. What year are for your like I've worked at Big Sky Resort. It's my third winter, but then I go here for the summertime, and then it ends up being so complex. This like taxonomy
Yeah.
of visitor versus resident. You actually can't really pin it down. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that it's really difficult. I hope that in a place like Big Sky, certainly we're welcoming to everybody,
Yeah.
because everybody should get a chance to be out in the mountains. I mean, just what we have on view here is something that I think the whole world should experience. Now, we can't handle everybody all at once, but I think there's plenty of room.
Yeah. I agree. And so I've talked to people that either moved here, from all over the world, the country and the world, and they felt the same thing I felt, which was a true welcoming. And I'm like, man, because I'm a business owner here, I gotta like, it is like not my sole purpose in life, but I really want people to know what that feels like. And in my mind, that's Montana hospitality is
Yeah.
when you come here and you're like, you know what? I didn't just feel welcome. I felt like I was part of the family,
Yeah.
sitting down with a family or friend, when they hop in one of our cars or our vehicles, we're very professional. We treat them very professional, but I try to take down that barrier of like, and like, it's something I try to, make sure is understood with myself and my team is that I don't care who you are and what you've accomplished, or if you think you've accomplished nothing and you're a nobody, like I want just the same way to be expressed to people. And I like, that's what made this place feel like home to me the first time I came.
Yeah.
And
And it's really fun for us. And we were talking earlier about like what happens when you're kind of stuck in a small place and you don't actually you kind of lose a sense of purpose and what can happen there. I mean, getting to be tour guide for someone who's really excited to be here reinvigorates, my love of the place. Yesterday, I got to play tour guide. It's kind of a funny day I had yesterday. Like, first half of the day was working around complications around like home ownership and what's happening in Big Sky. And then the second half was welcoming these artists to town and getting to show them the mountain. I got to take them up on top of the mountain and like watching them be on the gondola for the first time and be on a tram for the first time and up on top of a mountain. I mean, they were so excited and it was so infectious, and it makes me, it puts it all into perspective to say, God, we're so lucky to get to live here and sharing in that joy of visiting this beautiful place. Like, it's great. I respect, covering a lot of topics here. I respect that there are challenges with growth. There are growing pains. Big Sky's certainly going through that. Affordable housing, God, I mean, it's one of our biggest challenges. And I know everybody's feeling that across Montana and the challenges with tourism. But, I do think that idea of hospitality, of always being welcoming, it's how I was received, and it's what I want to pass on. And I think that, we can solve all these problems that we're seeing now, as long as we kind of keep a good attitude.
Yeah, I agree. It's a balance, but I think we're getting better at it. And yeah, I think we owe it to ourselves in the state and everyone here. So
Yeah.
very cool. You said you're a teacher. What do you teach?
I teach drama and music. Shocker.
Okay,
I know.
this makes sense.
Yeah. So that was part of the deal when we started the Performing Arts Center. I started as a teacher at Lone Peak High School. It's first year of the high school. And then in tandem with the teaching was to start the Performing Arts Center and figure out how to make those things work. So I direct the high school musicals. I have a morning singing group that I work with. And then right now I'm teaching theater, drama, advanced drama, kind of college level drama to some of the kids.
Very
We
cool.
read plays, Greek tragedies, put them on. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's just fun. And you said Tennessee is where you're from?
Tennessee is where I was born and raised. Yeah.
What part did you grow up in?
Knoxville, East
Okay.
Tennessee.
That's where my mother lives.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah. I went to school out west in Colorado, and then came here during the recession.
Nice.
Typical.
What drew you here? Mountains?
Mountains, skiing. I wanted to be in Big Sky. I came out with a few friends. It was the recession. Having gone to school in Colorado, I knew there were always going to be jobs in ski towns. So that was our thinking. We wanted to be in Big Sky because the skiing was amazing in Big Sky. I thought I was going to be here for 3 months and then ended up meeting people and starting the Performing Arts Center. And 17 years later, here we are. A typical story in Big Sky is people think they're going to be there for a season and then they stay for a lifetime.
Do you have any crazy records? Like there's a guy that he's coming to do the podcast, I think later this month, and he had like 80 months straight of skiing.
Oh my gosh. You mean like for me skiing?
Yeah.
I mean, my first 2 seasons, I was working a bunch of different jobs, mostly night jobs, and I would ski every day. I think I got 100 days my first 2 seasons because we were out every day. Since then, that has dropped dramatically. I think my goal is 40 this year. I am not doing great on that goal. Usually 20 to 30 days.
We'll blame the weather because the weather's not.
I mean, I've just kind of gotten involved. I love the work I get to do. I'm also a volunteer on a couple boards, and so I'd say I'm a little bit more in the meat of kind of community development these days.
I told you I'd streamline this episode and put it out pretty quick. So, what's the current ski report in Big Sky, and what events do you guys have coming up in whichever order you want?
Skiing in Big Sky right now is pretty good. It's been a really warm winter so far, but the snowpack is actually much better than people would expect, especially given what's going on around with our neighbors. So I skied this week and it was excellent. I had a great time. I think, if you have those low expectations with all the warm weather, you're going to be pleasantly surprised in Big Sky right now. At Wampak, we have some great shows coming up. I mentioned Michael Mayo, the jazz artist, who's coming in a couple weeks. We also have one of the coolest events we have done, which is a project called In a Landscape. We tow a Steinway grand piano out onto the middle of a Nordic cross-country ski course. And we give people headphones and set up a little transceiver radio, and they ski around a piano while getting to hear a concert. So we actually have a pianist out in the middle of the course who plays. We did it a couple times during the pandemic, and people loved it so much that we decided to bring it back. And the rest of the shows, we've got a world-class string quartet called the Kronos Quartet. We have a beautiful dance company called Momix. We've got a magic show with a group who has a Vegas residency. They're taking a weekend off to come be with us. They're called the Conjurers. All of this information is available online at our website, warrenmillerpac.org.
Very cool. And the piano, that was the brainchild of the pandemic.
Yeah. They usually play in the summertime in national parks. And I had reached out to them and said, hey, could we do this in the wintertime? And could we have people ski around it? And they loved the idea. We figured it out. And we're the only ones who do it. So
Very cool.
Nobody else ever figured it out. The key is hooking up the piano to a snowcat and towing it out on the course. So we have willing and able snowcat technicians who are able to make that happen.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so tell people where to go to find your website, social media.
Yep. So Wampak Big Sky is our Instagram handle. We've got everything up there. And then our website again, warrenmillerpac.org. It's all there for you.
Very cool. I love what you're doing, John. It's very cool to see the way it all ties together and the impact on the students in the community. And appreciate what you're doing and respect what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It was a really great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for listening, folks. You can find the full blog post for every episode, along with key takeaways and links at mountain-mule.com. If you haven't yet, consider following the show. That one small action helps these Montana businesses get seen, grow, and thrive, and it helps this podcast keep going too. If you know a business that would be a good fit for the show, we'd love to hear from you. Just reach out through the website or social. Thank you for supporting these Montana businesses. See you on the next show.